Mr. President, with 4% of the world's population and 30% of the outbreak, what would you have done differently facing this crisis?
Well, nothing. If you take New York and New Jersey, which were very hard hit, we were very, very low. And in terms of morbidity and in terms of, you look at the death, relatively speaking, we're at the lowest level along with Germany.
This is how easily you dispense with this, okay? Relatively speaking, to use the president's own phraseology, we're third from the bottom. Trump doesn't know the truth about COVID from covfefe. And who defines success against a virus as the least deaths? How about the least cases? How about the best and fastest response? Let's bring in the governor of New York, my brother Andrew Cuomo. Oh, what are you, sick?
No. Boy, you're fired up today. No, I'm not sick, but I don't want to be sick. I don't want to make other people sick. Hence, wear a mask. Wear a mask. It's a sign of respect. I respect you. You respect me. I thank the healthcare workers for everything they did. Wear a mask. Why, you don't like it? Matches my suit.
No, I do like it, and I get the statement that you're making. This is what leaders should be doing. You should be doing what you're telling everybody else to do. I get it. I appreciate it. I don't think you need it right now, though, Gov. Right? You're socially distanced.
Does it bother you?
No, I think that the more of that facie that's covered, probably the better for my audience. But in terms of just seeing what's coming out of you, you can then take it off.
Yeah. Then I'm taking it off.
Yeah.
No, if you like it, I'm taking it off.
No, I don't want to deny my audience that beautiful visage that they all like so much in the Love Gov. All right, now, let me see where your head is a little bit on the state of play. President says you take New York State and New Jersey out of the mix, and America crushed the COVID response. They're just a couple of laggers where you guys got hit hard, but the rest of the country was great.
Yeah. Well, look, first, where do you begin, right? But let's take the first point about New York and New Jersey. Why did New York and New Jersey get hit, is what you want to say. The reason New York and New Jersey got hit it was nothing about New York and New Jersey, because by the time we closed the door on China, the virus had left China and was already in Europe. And then our coronavirus cases came from Europe, and nobody even knew. So the China travel ban, which seemed early at the time, was actually late. The Europe travel ban, mid-March, was late. January, February, March, we have 3 million Europeans land at JFK and Newark airports in New York and New Jersey. That's where the virus came from. So if you want to do a retrospective, what did we learn? First, we learned that the whole early warning system did not work. The buzzer did not go off. China had the virus last November, December. We don't act until February, March. By that time, the virus was gone. It got on a plane in China. It went to Europe. It went with the workers. It went to the Lombardy region of Italy. And then it came to New York, New Jersey, because that's where the flights come. So that was the first point where we have to go back to come up with a system that corrects that.
All right. So now you say, well, let's look forward. Don't be so obsessed with the president. Look to Congress. They hold tremendous power in terms of what this reopening is going to look like. What is your concern about what's going to happen with this bill? It seems like it's dead in the Senate unless these few vulnerable Republican senators can push McConnell. What do you think about the politics, and what are you worried about in terms of the policy that should be in place?
Look, going forward, there's two big questions, right? What are we going to be talking about 8 months from now, 9 months from now that was determinative? First, have states figured out this reopening mechanism? Do you have enough testing, tracing in place? Can you calibrate the reopening, the economic reopening, by the public health data? It's never been done before. And have the states put that system together so that if there's a bump, they can react. That's one cluster of questions. Second cluster of questions, what does Washington do? They passed legislation, the CARES Act. They took care of a lot of businesses, airlines. They want to take care of hotels. They want to take care of all the businesses, right? What's good for General Motors is good for America. States are dying. Local governments are dying. You want these states to do all the reopening. You should do testing, you should do tracing, you have to have this, you have to have that. States have significant budget deficits because the economy collapsed through no fault of the state. If they don't pass legislation, Chris, that provides funding to state and local governments, you're going to see hospitals have reduced funding, police reduced funding, fire reduced funding, school reduced funding, and it's going to be a significant drain on the economy. So you tell me what happens with that congressional bill, where they're now just playing pure, blunt, partisan politics. That's all this is. I mean, they literally say, why should we bail out blue states? How disgusting is that? You know, you want to talk about Americans who died and you want to classify them as Democrats or Republicans? But it's pure partisan politics. I was afraid of this. It's rearing its ugly head. But if they play politics with this bill and you starve the states and the local governments, this is going to be a very different course for this nation. It's going to take much longer to come out of it.
Quickly, what is the provision you want about putting people first?
Well, what I fear, 8 months from now, we're going to look back and we're going to say, oh, look at all these corporations got all this money from the federal government and then laid off workers. That is what is going to happen. The corporations are now talking to the analysts on Wall Street and they're prophesizing this. They need to show profits up. How do you show profits up? You get payroll down. How do you get payroll down? You cut labor. They had a labor force. They didn't want to lay it off, but now it's home, so they can just not rehire it. And they'll take corporate money to subsidize their layoff strategy. My law says, very simple, if you take government money, you cannot lay off workers. You must rehire the same number you had pre-pandemic. You want to lay off workers, you want to get lean, you want to restructure, do it on your own dime. The taxpayers are not going to subsidize you to lay off workers and then have to pay unemployment for those workers. Fool me once. That was the 2008 bailout. Right. I was Attorney General. I spent 2 years chasing AIG, chasing Bank of America. They got those bailouts from the federal government because they were too big to fail, and they gave themselves a bonus, and they gave themselves a party, right? This time they're going to lay off workers. You watch.
Well, hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully they put in a provision like that and we start protecting the right people this time. And speaking of protection, obviously the major prophylaxis here, masks as you wore tonight, testing. You said that the state actually has more testing capacity than it can use. How? When I still hear people always saying they can't get a test, they don't know if they should get the COVID test or the antibody test, they don't know where to get tests in their area. How do you have more testing than you can use?
Yeah, let me just give you the context, because I really want to be a nice and sweet and cooperative guest for you, and I don't want to challenge you.
Well,
but
you said it clearly the first time. I wouldn't have the question. But please, go ahead.
Well, that's not exactly what I said, but I don't want to challenge you on your show. And, you know,
it's a little late for that, but go ahead, please. The stage is yours.
Your wife and mine. Okay.
Just go ahead.
I said this with testing. First, we do about 1 million tests per week now in New York. New York is doing more testing per capita than any state in the United States. New York is doing more testing per capita than any country on the globe. I know it makes you proud. We do about 1 million a week. There's an unlimited need for tests that we administer of certain populations. You can test all nursing home residents, all people in congregate facilities, people in prisons, et cetera. On the public testing, on our drive-throughs, et cetera, we opened up about 700 sites across the state. And we have now so many sites that we actually have more sites than we have public demand in some places. And I'm trying to get the public to come up and actually understand that the sites are now open and they can get tests.
Okay.
We have some drive-in sites that can do 15,000 tests a day. We're doing 5,000. So we need to get up the public awareness to come out and go to the sites.
Good, and it's good that you are allocated testing into minority communities and housing projects, because those communities are going to get hit hard. People forget about them too often. It's important that you put them first. Now, you had video come out before we go to break where you wanted to encourage people to get tested, and some people are afraid it's going to hurt. So you had video of it that I want to show the audience of you actually getting tested. Here it is. There's you were kind of funny, and they were testing you. Now, a few questions about this process. First of all, is it true that when you were having the test administered, you inhaled and the doctor's finger went all the way up your nose and got stuck and had to be released with a tool? Is that true? Just to deal with the record.
She wanted to comment that I have a little button nose, and she was afraid that the swab would actually hurt because it extended my nasal cavity.
The proboscis
she was
issue.
Speaking about the delicacy of
the nose.
Yes.
And that's what, you know what, I understand. This is the normal swab I'm holding up here now, and for everybody at home. A very valuable object. There's only one company in the entire country that makes these up in Maine. All right, here's the swab. Is it true that this was the swab that the nurse was actually using on you, and that at first it went into your nose and disappeared, so that in scale, this was the actual swab that was being used to fit up that double-barrel shotgun that you have mounted on the front of your pretty face?
See, I said I was going to be nice and sweet.
I just want a yes, no. Was it this?
I was trying.
Or was it this?
Very hard. Look.
Which was it?
You know, first, I thought I did so well on that nasal test standing up there. She did the swab. I did not flinch. I was a cool dude in a loose mood. Didn't move.
Of course
anything.
you were.
I was happy.
That swab is like a piece of lint going in that thing in your face. How could it have collected anything? It was like throwing a rock around a cave.
So not right.
Was it this?
That is
or
just
was
not
it
right.
this? Tell people the truth. Come on, love go.
That is not right.
Come on, which was
This
it?
is not love. This is not love.
Listen, I just want to get it. I'm going to take a break because if you're not going to answer questions, I'm going to have to reset. I thought there'd be a little bit more transparency for the audience. I'll put it to them online. You know, this is the regular swab. This is what we're told disappeared in the governor's nose. And then we were told that this is what it took. We're going to take a break. When we come back, something that everybody wants to know, second to what I just asked. What is reopening going to look like in New York State, and what would be the triggers for the state to say, no, this is what we were worried about? Is it a number? Is it a feel? Is it a political calculus? What is it going to look like, and what changes might come based on what going forward? Important for everybody to know. We'll be right back. All right, we're back now with Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, of course. Some FAQs, frequently asked questions. When it comes to testing, thank you for clarifying how you're distributing it around the state, how you're focusing now on needs, minority communities. When people ask, should I still get a test to see if I'm positive or negative, or should I get the antibody test? What's your guidance?
My guidance. First, I want you to know, I'm glad you just moved on. I have a screen here, and I can see what you do now on that screen.
To what are you referring?
And
when the commercial break comes, it's like nothing happened before it. What are you referring to?
Oh, I see. I see. Well, that happened.
What happened? I don't know what you're talking about, but just please continue.
FAQ, yeah, you don't know. You don't know. We'll take it up. Yeah,
go ahead.
Okay. The antibody test tells you if you had the virus and if you recovered. Theoretically, for those people who believe there's an immunity if you have the antibodies, then that theory would pertain if you take the antibody test. You have the antibodies. At one time they said if you have the antibodies, you can't get the virus again. Now they're changing the facts on that, and there's an ambiguity. The diagnostic test tells you whether or not you have it today. So they're two different purposes. We use both, obviously, depending on what you're trying to determine. If you're just trying to test the positive level of a given community who has had it, or an individual who wants to know whether or not they have it today. So they're two different tests for two different purposes.
So the context becomes how people best equip themselves for reopening, social acceptance. You know, when you're going, you want to go somewhere, does it matter more if you say I'm negative or versus I have the antibodies? When you're looking at what this summer will look like, let's call it a temporary new normal. What is your description for people about what you think will phase in throughout the course of the summer, kind of a look forward between now and, let's say, Labor Day?
Well, we are now reopening regions all across the state, right, except for basically New York City, Long Island, Westchester are a little bit behind that. And we do it all on the numbers. There's no politics, there's no theory, I believe this, I believe that, my opinion, who cares? It's all on the facts. We literally have an equation, we have a formula, where we start to open up the economy. We start with construction, manufacturing, agriculture, retail, curbside pickup for retail. And then you watch the testing, right? You watch the diagnostic testing, you watch the hospitalization rate, et cetera, and you calibrate it that way. You start that economic activity, you see very little increase in the numbers, then you continue to increase the economic activity.
All right, so hold on right there.
You see the numbers start.
I get it. I get the number principle, but just so people can put context of experience to the calculation. You said if people get arrogant and casual about the distancing practices, then the rate will go up. So what does that look like to you in terms of what kind of rate going up would be enough for you to reassess whether or not you have to take remedial action, slow down, back off? Do you have any markers? How do you measure that?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you.
The first thing we have, I was just being kind, it was rhetorical.
It was rhetorical, I know, but I take it when I get it. Go ahead. Go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have experts who are, literally international experts, we have domestic experts, and they will watch the calibration. You start to see numbers go up. First of all, you want to make sure it's not a normal deviation, because this whole system was just put in place. You have a day-to-day deviation. Second, you want to make sure it's not a cluster situation where you have a hot spot or one cluster that's raising the numbers, which is actually better than just a community spread. And then you would attack that cluster. If you have a community spread,
that's why you keep emphasizing tracing. You need tracing for that. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I haven't emphasized tracing, but you do. It's testing, and you see the increase in the testing, and then what is the percentage of the increase? Can you handle that increase vis-a-vis your hospital capacity, right? Because that's the number on the other side of the equation. And then can you tamp it down, or do you need to dial back? And that's on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, we haven't been here before, and obviously nobody's done this before. So you watch it day to day on the numbers.
How dangerous a political calculation is that? All joking aside, you know, you start to see hospitalization rates. I think that's the metric that makes the most sense. It's the most acute metric of what's changing in a community. So it starts to go up. And the number is appreciable enough that the clinicians in that place start talking about it, local leaders start talking about it, they come to you. If you back off reopening, that is a dangerous political decision, especially during the summertime. You know, people are so desperate to get back, and to have things taken away from them can come with a cost. How do you calibrate that?
Yeah, first, the hospitalization rate, not to be difficult, is one of the indicators, but remember there's a lag on the hospitalization rate. There's about a 2-week lag. You get infected today, you don't wind up in a hospital for about 2 weeks. So actually the diagnostic testing is the primary device. But look, the politics on all of this are treacherous. This is one of those situations where you say, forget the politics. Politics be damned. Just do the right thing. Save as many lives as you can. Understand the practical reality about economic activity, and people have to work and people have to have a paycheck. And just do the right thing. This is not about politics, you know. This is about being able to sleep for the rest of your life, looking back at this moment and being able to say, I did the right thing. I saved lives. I saved as many lives as I could. You're going to get hit by both sides anyway. There is no win in this, right? You're going to have the people on one side saying you should have opened faster. You're going to have the other side saying if you didn't open, you would have saved lives. That's the way it's going to be. So forget what they say. I don't care what there is no they. It's this. And when it's over, that I can say we did everything we could. The government did everything it should. We performed, we stepped up. We got the hospital beds built, we got the ventilators, we got the staff, and we saved lives. And that's what we're going to do. So I don't really care, frankly, if the numbers say we should dial back the economic activity and the experts say we should dial it back, then we will do that. But Chris, and I'll say to the people of this state, look, you have no one to blame but the person in the mirror. Because the economic activity will not increase the virus rate if people are smart. The mask, you want to hear a fascinating fact. First responders have a lower infection rate than the general population. Nurses in emergency rooms, doctors in emergency rooms, transit workers, NYPD, fire department, EMT, they have a lower infection rate than the general population. How can that be? They're the ones who are in the emergency room with the COVID positive people. The masks, the PPE works, and the sanitizer works, the hand sanitizer. If people do that, the infection rate will be fine. If we get undisciplined or sloppy, then you're going to see it go up.
I appreciate your candor on what's happening. It's going to be a very tough summer for people. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of expectation, but there's also a lot of fear. And that's a lot to balance. As leaders, thank you for coming on. Thank you for having a good sense of humor about what is a very important public service message. A lot of people aren't getting tested because they're worried about it. Thank you for showing people how easy it is to get tested. You're shaking your head in the negative. I'm not sure why.
That was not, you were beyond. Don't call me, I'll call you.
What's wrong? I love you. I want you to know that.
Nothing. I love you.
Have a good night. What are you looking at?
I have the screen. I have the screen right here.
I'm not doing
because
anything.
I don't trust you.
I'm not
so
doing
I had
anything.
to put in the screen.
Look at the screen.
Okay.
Look at the screen right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
There's nothing.
Yes.
I'll see you later. Have a good night, Gov.
Yeah.